welcome you here. It's a pleasure to have you around. And I'm sure most of the people will be joining as we progress. We have tried to remind them the best we can. I know I can see from South Africa. I see my colleagues in East Africa. We have Sweden. We have Ghana, all the way from Ghana. And it's nice to link up again. I'll share a very small presentation. Just a minute. As we progress, we will try and keep time as much as we can. Welcome to Alumni Talks. And for those who are probably here for the first time, we'll give you a very small brief about what we do during our Alumni Talks. We usually have about 2 in a year, and we usually link up to something that is ongoing, that is active. ICLD Alum Talks, they have been there for a number of years. And for those who have not attended, please, you can go to ICLD website, and you can see all the alumni talks that have happened over the past years. Their videos, this one is being recorded, so you can be able to follow. At ICLD Alumni Talk, we ignite ideas, we encourage connections, and we drive change. It is a vibrant space for experts and alumni to spark meaningful conversations or dialogue like the one you're going to have later today. We also want to share knowledge, experiences to inspire positive impact. I'm sure Charity from Lusaka will share some of the experiences that they have had with the Know Your Neighbour. In fact, that is one of the things actually I want to do in Kenya. We also want to connect people for collective impact and inclusive development. Actually, Charity is in Gaborone, and yesterday she shared a photo of herself, the deputy governor who is an alumni, and also a former alumni mentor who was also a lecturer at the University of Botswana, which means that we are creating some connections. When you go to another country, you always find somebody that you can work with. And why this webinar, this particular one? We create awareness. We want to hear voices that count and solutions that work. I'm sure Dr. Richard will tell us about the research. That's voices that count. He will tell us about what the research is about. One, the issue of tackling plastic pollution with a fairness, democracy, and what we call community power. I'm sure most of you in urban cities, you know how much difficult it is to eradicate plastic pollution. We also want to bridging research, policy, and grassroots. Most of you who are from local governments and county governments can testify that we don't have a research department in your local governments or county governments. And it is, I don't know whether it's by design or it has not been given a lot of priority. So with ICLD, we try and work with universities, we want to try to work with researchers so that we can connect research with the policy. When we make a policy, it should be research informed, because like now what you have about from what Richard is going to tell us, you can be able to do something meaningful from something that has been researched. We also want to showcase about one case study that was done actually during one of the ITP programs in Lusaka, Zambia, called Know Your Neighbour, a model for advancing social cohesion and youth participation. And I'm sure Charity and Danny, who are here also, will be able to share with us a number of good case studies that happened with that. We also want to learn from our own experiences, where you come from, which country, which municipality, which local government, or what experiences do you have about dealing with plastic pollution after we have this wonderful presentation. And today's topic is about democratizing waste governance and the just transition. We will hear much more about this with our 2 presenters, who are Dr. Richard Kiaka, who is a researcher with the Center for Environment Justice and Development, short known as CEJAD. They are both based in Nairobi, Kenya. And they are going to share an insight on an ICLD project they did recently. And it is also a part of it is also online. You can read much more. But Richard will be able to tell us a little more about this. He was actually the principal researcher in this, so we'll have a very good interaction with him. We also have Charity Kalombo, who is from Lusaka City Council in Zambia. She was one of the pioneers of Know Your Neighbour, and she has a lot of information about it. It's a community-based program strengthening social cohesion, improving waste management, and youth participation. It's one of the projects actually I have been looking forward to implementing in one of our local governments in Kenya. And I hope next year, 2026, from this inspiration, I should be able to start it. You know our rules. You stay muted unless you'll be speaking. And when you're speaking, please make your comments short so that we can allow other people. Use the chat box to place your comments, to address us, or just whatever you feel like. I'm sure the presenters will be looking at those comments so that they can respond appropriately. You can join in video if you feel so, but If you are not, we will be comfortable with it. Be also respectful and stay engaged, especially with time. Allow me at this point to welcome my colleague, Clara Australians, who is going to make a brief remarks. And then after that, we'll have Richard. I'll introduce Richard, and then my colleague Danny will introduce Charity. And then after that, we'll have a moment of reflection, comment, and clarifications, and a very interactive session. We are looking forward to hearing from you, from wherever you are, even clarify how much this information will be up to you. Let me stop share and take it back to you, Clara.
Thank you very much, John. Good afternoon to everyone, and a warm welcome to today's Alumni Talk. My name is Clara Ostadius, and I am, as John said, the Alumni Manager here at ICLD, a work that I carry out together with John and Danny, who you will meet shortly. It's a pleasure to open this session today and see all of you, alumni, partners, friends, joining from different parts of the world. We're not a huge group here today, but seeing the names here on the screen, I know that it's a group that fits right into this topic that we will be discussing today. And I see all the expertise that is gathered in this room today, and that promises very fruitful discussions, also leveraging all of your collective knowledge in this field. Alumni Talks are one of our spaces for continued learning and exchange in the ICLD Alumni Program. They allow us to come back together as practitioners, as scholars, as people who are interested in a given field, to learn from each other's experiences and to keep strengthening local democracy well beyond the end of a program or a project that is happening through ICLD, where you all have been part at one point or another. And today's theme of inclusive waste management or waste governance offers a glimpse into how sustainable urban solutions emerge when people, and only when people, are empowered and recognized and invited into shaping these solutions together. So the speakers today represent two parts of a large and a complex puzzle in the waste management landscape. But it is only two parts out of a multitude of perspectives and dynamics that exist in this landscape. So I really do invite all the listeners to contribute your knowledge here as well. So ask questions, problematize, comments, all input will be very welcome to the discussion. And with that, I will not talk for longer, but I welcome everyone to this forum, and I am very excited to hear the rest of the presentations. Thank you to the speakers for sharing your insights, and to all the alumni who come here continuously, and for all the work that you do in your communities and your continuous curiosity to learn more. So with that, I hand over back to you, John, and I will close my microphone for the rest of this session. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much, Krala from ICLD. We work closely with Krala and the matters ICLD, especially in the East Africa. And then we have Danny Shibida, who does support the alumni activities in the southern part of Africa, that is Zambia, Zimbabwe, Botswana, and South Africa itself. With that, allow me now to invite our first speaker, Dr. Richard Kiaka, is a researcher with SEJAD, and he has been the one who has been taking this particular research. He's the principal researcher. And without much, please, Bona Richard, if you're ready, please, this is your moment. If you'd wish any presentation, please also feel free to upload. You have about 10 minutes or thereabouts, and I will alert you when your time is about to be over. Welcome, Dr. Richard.
Thank you so much, John, for inviting me to this alumni talk for the ICLD. Could I please confirm with you if you can see my slide?
See your slide, but not in, what do you call it, that mode, presentation mode. Perhaps you need to click the...
Now I have to...
The one below, but we can see it.
Yeah, you can see it. So now is the challenge of doing exactly what you have said. Okay.
No, it's okay, continue. We can see it.
So, okay, I can do that. Then I can do this and I can check that. If it doesn't, I will just continue. It's no problem. Okay, so, okay. So I don't know if it's moving or not. You can tell me, but thanks a lot. I would like to make a presentation in this alumni talk that we have today, and thanks for inviting me. I will reflect on the project that we were doing, collaboration with the ICLD and with very strong support from the county government of Mombasa. This talk is titled Towards a Just Transition in the Plastic Governance, where we are reflecting on the role of grassroots waste pickers and the creation of participatory spaces, and reflecting about it through environmental democracy framework. Prior to this presentation, I was able to consult with John, who is the audience. So initially I thought the audience was going to be like the scientific audience, and it was informed as a general audience. So I had to change and remove all the academic stuff from it. I am not sure if it is moving, John. Is it?
Now just click not yet.
What about that?
Let's see.
Okay. No, nothing happens. Okay.
Oh, no, not yet. Not yet. Okay. I can continue the same.
Okay. All right. That's okay. Why do we talk of plastic governance, and why does it matter to bring it into the democratic space? And why should we reflect on plastic, which is considered a waste, and which is being discussed today internationally, and ways in which it can be managed, development of the Global Plastic Treaty, and is also a hot topic in Kenya. First is to note that about, or ranging from 500,000 to 1.3 million tons of plastics is generated in Kenya annually. That is the estimation, but these figures vary from depending on who gives the data. And then two, that there's two central actors that we reflect on here, which are engaged in plastic management. First is the county governments, which shoulder the financial and the operational burden of waste management. So county governments have to deal with the problem of plastics, which is generated by other players, not really the county government, but they have that mandate. And secondly, are the waste pickers, who are very crucial in innovating ways of dealing with plastics. They reach hard to access areas such as the informal households or informal settlements, and they innovate new ways of valorizing that plastic, either through recovery, waste, and also educating the household. But then there are, from these two players, there are key environmental justice gaps that emerge. The first one is that these waste pickers mostly or largely remain unrecognized. They remain unsupported. Their innovations are usually taken lightly, sometimes even laughed at by the major players in the waste recovery sector. And then the second issue, which emerges as an environmental justice problem, are the manufacturers, who are rarely held accountable for the waste that they produce. And if we want to look at plastic waste through the frame of a just transition, then we need to think of fairness and inclusivity, where we talk of the inclusion of all players, including these waste pickers, but working in collaboration with the county governments, whom have said are responsible for waste governance within this local governments. For this webinar, I would like to reduce the purpose or the objectives of our research project into only two for the purposes of this webinar. But for other purposes, we would broaden it. The first objective is that we wanted to create processes of engagement between county government, to co-create processes of engagement between county government and waste actors, if you like, in this case, more specific waste pickers in the plastic management or waste management. And two, we wanted to analyze how these processes that we co-create enable or constrain democratic plastic governance, and how they can feed into the broader discussion of a just transition on plastic governance. Now, we took the case of the Mombasa County in order to, represent these thoughts, in order to to analyze and to investigate these matters. Our approach was primarily qualitative in nature. So even though I will be talking about some quantities, but the data that we engaged with was highly qualitative, and we used the qualitative approaches. Mombasa County for us was important because of the leakage, the possible leakage of plastic waste into the marine ecosystem, which has taken a very strong central stage in the global plastic treaty discussion and also global plastic waste debates. So in this talk, I'm going to present two of the co-created processes that we engaged with. The three of them are the participatory videos, plastic brand audit, and democracy labs. For this purpose, as I've said, I'm only going to concentrate on plastic brand audit and the democracy labs. Going on to one, which is the plastic brand audit. Plastic brand audit, for those who may not be aware, is a participatory citizen science methodology that is used to systematically document and analyze branded plastic waste found on the environment. So we engage in collecting it in an exercise where we collect, we sort, we identify those brands, and then we record those brands. Who is the manufacturer? Which country does it come from? What plastic type it is? And this is important for us because in Kenya today, the extended producer responsibility is a regulatory tool that has been proposed, in fact, passed in law, even though part of it is in court, but largely is being implemented, that is being used to bring to book or to hold manufacturers accountable for the waste, the plastic waste that they give to the market. So EPR assumes that or requires that manufacturers should be responsible for taking back the waste of the plastic once it has reached its end of use stage. And they do that by having producer responsibility organizations that go out to get that and they pay for that. So brand audit, therefore, is important to have because it helps us to identify who are those manufacturers and then hold them accountable. And we think this is a very important tool that county governments can use. So having engaged in an exercise in Mombasa, in a plastic brand audit exercise in Mombasa, there are certain findings that our plastic brand audit are able to show us. And I will just go very quickly. The first one is that from the plastic brand audit that we conducted, for the type of product, the food packaging emerged as the largest contributor of plastic pollution within Mombasa along the beaches where we collected this waste, accounting for about 66% of all the material that we collected. In terms of material type, the polyethylene terephthalates, or what is usually called the PET, the PET, like the plastic bottles for water that we have, was the largest contributor, which was having in the excess of 30% of the plastic that we collected. What is important there is that an identifiable material was about 30%. And this is important because it means that manufacturers who are producing plastic materials and leading them into the market and are not having permanent or labels that can last long are becoming rampant. And this means holding them accountable within the realm of the EPR law becomes difficult. In terms of product layering, multi-layer plastic materials we found that were also significant. We collected all the materials we collected, 20% of that was the multi-layer. Now, this is important because multi-layered plastic is very difficult to recycle, and most times they are not collected by the waste pickers because they have no market value, they cannot be recycled. So they end up being in the environment. For leading brands, and this is what is important, we found that Azam energy drink, which is produced by Bekreza Food Products in Tanzania, for the majority. Now, this means that if we want to engage in practices of EPR and practices of managing and accounting for plastic products in the environment, then we need to engage in cross-border trade policy. So it means it's something that goes beyond the local to the national trade policies as well. But cumulatively, most of the products plastic waste that we found along the beaches in Mombasa were of products produced in Kenya. Important there is that unbranded products were 35%. The products that we could not find their brand were 35% of the materials that we collected. This means that a large percentage of waste cannot be accountable, and then those who produce them cannot be held accountable. In summary, to summarize the brand audit before I move to the last one, which is Democracy Lab, we can learn some lessons. Lesson one is that brand audit can be an effective tool of promoting citizen engagement, because when we do the brand audit, we engage the citizens and they can see and be responsible for the amount of plastic they give into the environment. And two, it can be used by counties to generate data that they can submit to NEMA and their county assemblies in the process of accounting for plastic waste in the environment within their jurisdiction. Three, it enhances information sharing, transparency, and four, it can assist counties to identify and respond to non-compliance of producer responsibility organizations. Those counties will also have to give this data to NEMA in collaboration as well. Lastly is that brand audit provides useful information about the need to include waste pickers. For example, it exposes the need for fair remuneration for waste pickers. Brand audit is a TPR. When you get it, you can see the amount of work that you do. Waste pickers are often paid according to the kilograms of waste they bring, not the amount of time they take to collect from the environment. Going into tool 2, which is Democracy Lab, these are forums which bring different stakeholders together and are able to bring government offices, other government offices together, waste pickers together, CSOs together, modalities of holding those democratic forums together, and we discussed or facilitated that discussion as such. So it's a way of designing and discussion. And I just want to highlight 5 functions of this forums. The first one is that the democracy labs that we undertook helps the waste pickers to assert their identities as waste pickers, as innovators, not as people to be ridiculed, not as street urchins, but people who are rendering service to the environment and the residents of Mombasa. But also, secondly, they assist some policy discussions. For example, we were able to discuss about privatization and all that. And this provided a room not to contest, to elaborate, and a room also for county governments to respond and explain. So, and it's a structured form, accountability forum, but largely it was used as a tool for political agency for the waste pickers. Some of the key outcomes, the real outcomes that these forums generated was one, that the waste pickers eventually were able to be included in the county technical working group that's dealing with waste. And that was a very, very good outcome and a very good gesture from the county government. Secondly, they were able to deliberate on the privatization and zoning laws and policy design. And this gave the county government a very good opportunity to explain to waste pickers what they mean by this. And then they were able to reach a middle. So it's a way of consulting. Lastly, that it was able to catalyze county actions which some waste pickers found maybe by that time to have been slow. And we were very happy during this time that when an issue was raised by a section of the waste pickers about, the trucks collecting waste only coming to their areas a few times, the county government was able to act very swiftly and say we are going to address that in a subsequent democracy. It was reported that this had been solved, and so through that we found the democracy is a very, very good way of co-creating, collaboration, co-creating democracy in terms of dealing with waste in general, but plastic waste in specific. To conclude, I just want to say that if we want to move to think the transition, it's not just to be a talk of the national governments or international fora, but it should also be a talk within the local governments as well. For example, we need to recognize that waste pickers are also co-designers of governance within the county government, waste governance plans. And secondly, that we need to move beyond inclusion just for legal reasons. We need to shape governance architectures to provide spaces for inclusion. And we think Democracy Lab is able to break these silos. And it's something that we could really, really recommend to the county government to engage in. And just as a final thought, a just transition demands more than an inclusion. It requires shifting power structures and recognize waste speakers, not just as beneficiaries of policy, but also agents that can shape those political decisions. They are co-governors with us. And the work that I've presented to you Center
Hello, Richard. Thank you, Richard. That was the end. The internet, I think, was shaky, but I'm sure most of us have been able to follow closely. And that was a very interesting presentation. I would be glad to hear from my colleagues who are later on after this. Colleagues who I can see here are very enthusiasts of issues to do with climate change and environment, like Rita Gashero. I see you, Maria Castro from Zambia, Sylvia Moshiri, and other people I've seen here who are very enthusiastic about the issues that I've had. They have been talking to me about this. And thank you so much, Dr. Richard. We'll get back later with some questions or clarifications. But before that, and by the way, before I finish, this project has been sponsored by ICLD. Dr. Richard's organization, SEJAD, are working closely with ICLD so that we can be able to have this information shared amongst our alumni and also our partners and stakeholders wherever ICLD is operating, and also to share with other countries that would benefit from this. Thank you so much, Richard. We are going to go back to you. Can I have something, or we go back to Danny? Danny, are you ready? Danny, if you're there, please
yes,
help us introduce specialty.
Yeah.
Danny is my colleague from South Africa. He's the alumni coordinator for the South African countries, and they have worked very closely with Charity during an ITP program. Danny was the mentor for Charity, and I'm sure it would be great to hear Danny introduce her student, Charity. Welcome, Danny.
Okay, thank you very much, John. And it's great to see everyone who's gathered to listen to this interesting topic. So the Charity is one of the team members, like John had indicated, that initiated the Know Your Neighbour initiative in the city of Lusaka. So she's a senior community development officer under Lusaka City Council and was part of the ITP program. So maybe to just indicate a few key points to note before Charity comes in with the presentation is that the team that Charity was in charge of, she was the coordinator, worked with various stakeholders. That is from the private sector, public sector, even those from the religious organizations, to be able to implement the Know Your Neighbour initiative, a locality where it was implemented. And interestingly, this initiative was taken on board by the UN country office, that is UNDP, in Zambia, who supported it for 3 years because of the good results it had achieved. So it would be very interesting just to learn from Charity how they were able to attain that success, which was able to bring on board the UN to support their work. So Charity, over to you.
Thank you, Danny, for that powerful introduction. Like he has said, Charity Kalombo. I work for Lusaka City Council. I'm in the housing department. And the Know Your Neighbour is an initiative that we had as part of the ITP Cohort 1 project that we did with ICLD. Yes, I don't have a presentation to share, but I have a poster which I want to share, and then maybe it can indicate all those areas, the results and the impact of which this project had. Am I audible? Okay.
Yes, you are, Charity. Very, very clear.
Okay. All right. So let me share right now. This is on. Are you able to see the poster?
Yes, we see it.
Okay. Just trying to see it. Okay. Just trying to reduce it a little bit. Well, I'll try. Is it readable or not?
I think it's not. What you can do is speak to it, and then since we are going to share all the presentation that we are making today, the colleagues will be able to look at the details when you share.
Okay, excellent, Danny. That's how we're going to do it, because I think I'll take more of your time if I did this. Let me just stop sharing this and I just talk. So the Know Your Neighbour initiative was an initiative that we came up with, like I said, as part of the ICLD a requirement for us to be able to graduate in that 1 year, 8 months we had the first cohort on inclusive political leadership. So this is a project that we had developed with the community, or one of the communities in Lusaka called Kapwepwe, Ward 29. And in this initiative, we wanted to try and resolve 2 issues. One of the issues was waste management, and the other issue was governance. So to do with the 2 things in terms of governance, we had to also focus, if we're talking about waste management, we focus on the historical dumping sites that were in that area, which is Kapwepwe. And then in terms of governance, we had to focus on crime prevention, because we were faced with the issue of junkies, or young street kids, that we can say, young kids or young adult street kids that you find, and they threaten the security of both women and also the security of people within the area. So we had to find a way of dealing with this issue, because it emanated from the community. And the good part of this issue is that it started with the community themselves, because it came from them. when we were writing issues to do with waste management, but then we had to also include this issue of crime prevention. But when we went on the ground to do a prototype of this initiative, the community actually came up with those two issues which they wanted to resolve. So we had to connect them to the stakeholders that were available. So from the start, during the training, we were taught to do the stakeholders analysis, like who is supposed to be involved in this, and we had to input them from start as to who is supposed to be involved in this project. So that's how come we were able to actually map out the stakeholders and have that broad stakeholders list that we came up with. So what was the impact of this project? Is that it was able to deal with the issues of organizing the community and also getting results done. Out of that, we had actually organized to do a community center, which was going to deal with the issues of crime prevention. And then also we had a parents and teachers association that was going to deal with young girls and also young boys that needed to go back to school. And also the waste management part of it was that we needed to turn the garbage into some resource that the community could actually use out of it. So that's how we dealt with this project. The good part, like I said, is that it was community driven. Our role as the local authority or as drafters of that initiative was to link them to the resources as to where they can actually get that done. So we did the stakeholders mobilization, and like Danny said, we had UNDP come on board, and then we also continued to market the initiative on different forums. So like the Know Your Neighbor, we did a video that we could market because with visuals, people are able to understand more. But we also needed to gather what we call buy-in from our political leaders within the country. So we had to present this to the Minister of Local Government so that it could be a countrywide initiative that could be implemented in all the other councils. But first, we had to pilot it with Lusaka itself. So we presented it to the council, and the council had agreed that it be scaled to all the other wards that were in the city. So which was a very good tool for the leaders recognized on what they're doing in terms of dealing with the issue of waste management. And also it was a good tool for them to assess the terms of governance and improve the way they relate with the communities. So because when you go out there, you find that the council has got a very bad name. Every time the council goes into the community, they'll be saying, but you don't provide the service. What is this waste management you're talking about? So we had to improve the image that the council had. So that was a plus for us. So in terms of having the Minister of Local Government scale the project up to the other districts, that was not done because it required also another level of engagement, but we concentrated on what we had. When I say we marketed the initiative to so many others, we were able to market it also with AINI, which is a project, which was a core also to look at projects, initiatives that are raised by the communities, and we came out second in the world actually. So we have a video that's on YouTube on what we were able to do on community gardens that came out of the Know Your Neighbor initiative. So in short, the Know Your Neighbor actually became an initiative that grew even beyond what we had expected as the drafters of that initiative. It is now self-sustaining and it's been taken on board, and we have the Constituency Development Fund actually funds some of its resources to build this center for sports and skills training within that community out of that small initiative that we had drafted, 3 of us, including the political leader of the area. So this is my brief on that. I think I'll just take some of the questions from John and then maybe try to focus in that direction. Thank you, John.
Thank you so much, Charity. At least I've had the honor of visiting your project and also interacting with it much more during the ITP and beyond. I think I'm in contact with yourself and Danny in related to that, because I know probably 2026 you're going to start one here in Nairobi, Kiabu, or one of the boundary metropolitan counties. Thank you so much for those wonderful presentations. As we mentioned earlier, this is a time for reflections and maybe comments or clarifications. You could also share some of the areas, some of the examples that you have in your own countries. And for questions, clarifications, please make them brief. And I see Angel Maipopo from Shinyanga, Tanzania. You have raised your hands. Please continue.
Thank you. I have a question for the first presenter. As we all know that waste is money, how did they link between the waste collection, plastic waste collection with money? And another question, did they manage to find a machine for recycling those plastic bags that they were collecting? Thank you.
John, you're muted.
How do we proceed, John? Do you want us to? Do you want me to respond?
We can take a few questions, like 3, and then you can respond.
Yeah, I think that's okay.
Like 3 questions, and then you can respond. That would be fair.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Angel. Any other person before I share my quick one as well? Mine is about the producer. What do you call it? Producer manufacturer responsibility. In Kenya, do we have a law that deals with this? Is it under the Sustainable Waste Management Act? And who is the enforcer? Who should ideally enforce this? And how is it now based on what you did the research in? Maybe you can do, is there see whether there's another third one? That person? No, you can answer those ones as we progress. Over to you, Dr.
Thank you, John. Thank you for reflecting on that. Do you hear me?
This is hard, Danny. You
Okay.
can ask so that he can answer 3 questions. Danny. Danny
Yes,
Shibida.
John. Yes, John. Before Richard answers, I also have a question, almost in the same line as yours, except that I just want to learn from Richard. When they discovered that some of the waste that was found in Mombasa was from a company that is manufacturing those products in Tanzania. And he talked about how do we also have a mechanism to bring the cross-border traders or trading into the extended producer responsibility. So my question is, what either COMESA or through AU, what regulations are there or directives are there that could help in that area of bringing those producers that are outside your jurisdiction into a local kind of system that regulates waste? Is there anything that is existing at the moment, either from the COMESA side or from the AU side? And if not, how do we approach this to ensure that we have a framework of that nature within our regions?
Over to you, Dr. Richard.
Thank you so much, John. Thanks, Clara. I have seen that you are here as well. I'm so happy. And my colleague, Ledona, is here, can also jump in whenever she feels like adding something. I think the questions are straightforward. The first question, and thanks for this question. Yes, there is a great linkage between waste and value. So we will look at this in terms of, ways of valorizing plastic waste. So, and recycling of plastics and other waste is something that is, so well established in Kenya. You can look at it across all the value chains, across all the scales. You can look at it as at the waste pickers, what they do, how they recover, and then you go to the middle level. There are middle, small to middle recycling companies who do the recycling, and then we have also the large established recycling companies. The waste move like this, that the waste pickers, when they recover the waste, in many cases, the waste pickers we deal with, they do not have the capacity to have the equipment to recycle, so they do what they know best. They take the waste, they clean it, they sort it, they put it aside, they separate it from the waste that they don't need, which has no value, and then they now put this waste, they bring this waste to those who collect it and take it to the recycling. So that's how the waste pickers are able to, get value from the waste. So they are really innovators. One of the methods that we used was the participatory videos, and I did not have the time to show all the three here. And these videos, when you watch them, and I think very soon they should be on ICLD website or Sejat website there. When you watch these videos, the waste pickers are able to showcase how they handle waste in some areas, how they add value to this waste through recycling, through repurposing, through making use of it in different ways. In one of the community or the waste picker groups in Mombasa, we have been able to work with them as CJAT to provide them with a shredder that they can shred the waste. Is a way of adding value addition to what they do. So they shred, and then the waste buyers come to buy now shredded waste. So if they sell it that way, then they sell something that is already having value added to it. So in general, that's how I can respond to the question of connecting waste to value. It's something that's really well established in Kenya, and it works well. However, I need to mention that there's need for more work with the waste pickers, the type of waste pickers that we're working with, in terms of capacity building. The second question was to do with EPR. Do we have a law? Yes, EPR is a regulation. There is an EPR regulation of 2024, which is under the Sustainable Waste Management Act, which you referred to. There has been difficulties with it. You know that manufacturers would not be very happy with the law that requires them to pay for the waste that they put in the market. There were controversies. So I don't want to talk so much about it, because part of the regulation is in court, especially the areas that needs to deal with the payments that the manufacturers need to pay, the fees. But the other elements, like establishing the producer responsibility organizations and the rest of the elements of the law is in force. But the element of the fees, that is in court. So I don't want to talk so much about it. But yes, we do have it, and I think hopefully the court issue will be settled very soon. The last one, which in terms of the trade, when I say we realized that the waste we collected, plastic waste we collected, a single product was manufactured in Tanzania. This does not victimize Tanzania in any way, because we do know that cross-border trade is something that is quite common. You will find products in Kenya also ending up in Tanzania and so on and so forth. How to deal with this are two ways. I do not know if EAC has a direct law or procedure of regulating plastic. The EAC here is the East Africa Community. If it has a law on that I do not know, and I cannot comment on. But what I do know is that in Kenya, there is the Kenya Bureau of Standards, KEBS, which has standards that are regulating plastic and plastic products that are coming into the country. There is the cross-border trade policies with the customs. So I think it is through these mechanisms of governance and mechanisms of the government that we are able to control. So not really to say, okay, we cannot move products, we cannot trade, but yes, we can trade, but then how do we handle the plastic waste that emerge from this, from that trade? And then we also have NEMA, the National Environment Management Authority. And by the way, John, National Environment Management Authority, is the body that enforces the EPR regulation. NEMA also has a law in Kenya that can be used to, regulate what does come in and what, how the waste that might from it can be regulated. I would reflect on those questions in that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Any other question? It's open. Please feel open for both either Charity or Dr. Richard. You can also share your cases in case you have also a producer, how to call it, manufacturer's responsibility in your country. You could tell us how it is working or how you deal with plastics. Maybe for Charity, before they come in, how did you deal with the youth? I know dealing with the youth sometimes can be difficult, especially in some of the urban areas. Did you group them into youth councils, or how did you manage? And especially imagining there are some areas that probably would be a bit hostile. Just how did you work with the youth? That's specialty.
Yeah, John. Like you said, the youths are always a problem in any situation. They have a mind of their own. So with us on this project, the youth were part and parcel from the beginning. Like I said, we had to map out the stakeholders. That was the first part. 2, since they were a target group in terms of governance, because we wanted, first of all, to see this governance that we're talking about, we have the youth, and then we also have the ward development committees in terms of which decisions are made. The youth, we formed what we called a junior council, which we presented to the main council for Lusaka City Council. So we had junior councillors that should speak to the issues pertaining to their locality, which included waste management. So we had a junior mayor, a junior councillor, and we recognized this at the city level. So that's what we did. Then for the ward development committees, we had awards that would award the youths themselves that are turning away from being junkies and going back to school. So we use those as advocates. So that is what we did with the Know Your Neighbour project.
Thank you so much, Charity. Any other comments? I'm looking for hands up there, please. Let's make it interactive. I'm sure many of you have dealt with plastic issues in your urban areas before. So you can ask Richard or Charity how these things are going. And Danny, you feel free to add something about the Kenya KYN, because you are a mentor for that in case you have some
yeah, so maybe if I can come in just to add, what we can also add is that, like Charity indicated, the issue of creating value out of the waste. We were able to bring on board a company called Zambia Bottlers. So Zambia Bottlers established what we call aggregators, the people who aggregate the waste. So the women from the households, as they were separating waste, because we introduced separating waste. So the organic waste is what they were using to do gardens, those gardens which Charity was talking about, which we presented to a program in Spain, and we came out number 2 in the world. Then the other plastic waste, they were selling it to the aggregators that Zambia Bottlers had arranged so that they could see the value out of that waste. So instead of them just paying to the waste to the waste collectors, because we have like what we call community-based enterprises. So what they were doing is, if you recycle your waste or you separate your waste, they will charge you less. If you don't, they charge you more. So that created an incentive for the households to separate their waste, as well as another incentive for them to use the organic waste as fertilizer for their gardens and the plastics to sell to the aggregators. So that's how the project was also able to achieve more impact.
Okay, thank you. I see a word from Agostina and Richard. Agostina first, please go ahead. Agostina, please feel free to continue with your question or comment before we allow Richard to respond. Oops. Okay, Richard, you can go ahead as we wait for Agostina.
Thanks, John. Two things that I want to add to the discussion. What I want to emphasize here is the need to bring to include waste pickers in decision making in all these processes of managing waste, because as I mentioned in Kenya at least, and we do know that this is also true for many African countries, that waste pickers, they are the ones who go into the places where the local government, whether it's the municipalities, the county governments for Kenya, cannot go. The trucks collecting waste of the government, of county governments, of local governments, cannot go into the informal settlements where the majority, where a large amount of plastics are also produced or released into the environment. So these waste pickers are the ones who go into these areas. And unlike many middle private sector waste handlers, the waste pickers, they are very careful in how they handle their waste because they get what is useful. What we see in Kenya is that the middle level waste handlers, they act as conveyor belt from waste collection points straight to the dump sites, the municipal dump sites. But for waste pickers, they are very careful. They go into these bins, they go into the households because they want to get things that are of value to them, that can be of economic sense to them. So I want just to emphasize that it is very important to see them being active within the decision-making processes at the county. What we now do as CJAT in Kenya, in order to provide this space for inclusion, one, we are now developing a popular version of the EPR regulation. And from the work that we did, there was a really intense interest, including from GIZ, Germany, supporting that work, that development of the popular version of the EPR, so that it can be read and understood by anybody who picks it. And then the other part is to go within the different counties. We now go into, I think, 4 or 5 counties in Kenya, to ensure that the EPR process, when the manufacturers are putting up their producer responsibility organizations, the ones that are responsible for collecting and paying for it, that they collaborate very closely, these PROs collaborate very closely with the waste pickers, because the waste pickers who get the waste, the plastics from the places they cannot go. So we are now working to bring the waste pickers and the PROs that have been established together, so that if possible, they can sign some memorandum of understanding, some contractual agreements, so that they can see how they will be able to work together, including remuneration. But last point that I also want to bring in here, John, as I conclude, is that we also need to problematize recycling of waste of plastics. Recycling of plastics, as we know from literature and from the industry, is that producing plastic materials, products from recycled plastic is much more expensive than creating plastic from virgin plastics. So recycling will not stop the problem. If we only concentrate on recycling and seeing value in plastic waste, that does not entirely solve the problem. But we also need to emphasize on reducing production of virgin plastics, because it is the production of plastic materials from virgin plastics that is way cheaper than creating plastic materials from recycled plastics.
That's an important point there, right there, about the issue of producing plastics. And I think we have been dealing much more with recycling without really going back into production. Any other question to either Dr. Richard or Charity? Feel free to ask. There's no long answer. There's no long question or comment. This is our learning lessons, and don't let Richard or Charity go back with all this knowledge of what they have been doing. I have quite a number of them. I'm just, oh yes, Cecilia from ICLD, please go ahead. Or is it Cecilia? No, it's Angie, sorry. Angie.
I have a question. Here in Tanzania, the local government earn money from waste that are being collected in household levels and hotels. And it depends on the amount of money, depends on the waste that are produced. So if it's a household or it's a commercial, so how did it work in Zambia? Are the local government, are they collecting money from the household when they pick the waste? So how did it affect them in their program? Because it then says the household used for garden and company are paying money for the household. So how did it work in Zambia there? Is it the local government also collect money from the waste that they are collecting?
Okay, thank you so much, Angel. And a follow-up question to that, Charity. Are you practicing sorting waste at source? Is that something that you're considering, or is it happening, or how is it going? Any other one more question before Charity comes in? Agustina, yes. Please go ahead.
Yeah, good afternoon to everyone.
Afternoon.
My question is like my sister just said, I think I did type something in there. In Ghana, we have companies that deals with the trash, and the government also does a little of it. But the point is, the private one has an more upper hand over it than the government, because they are using it as a business and they get more money from it. And the government, the one that is for the government to get, mostly they don't get any revenue because people don't participate. So it's become a little difficult for us how to handle trash within the country. So everywhere that you go, there is a trash, because if they don't have the money to pay, it means they will just dump it anywhere as it is. On this case, how do we handle it, or how do we have to go about it? Thank you.
Okay, actually, Charity was off briefly. I think her network had disappeared, so we have to repeat those questions. In the meantime, Joseph Mbugo, you have a question, please go ahead. Joseph, can you hear us? Okay, I'm sorry that. Charity, did you hear the question by Angel Moipopo?
No. Can you repeat that?
Angel, you can probably say it again. I noticed Charity had went off briefly, so you can repeat it again.
Okay, I was saying here in Tanzania, for example, in my country, local government, when they collected waste from the family level, they took money. So how is the practice in Zambia? Are they also local government collecting also money from the family members? Because you have said that they will use waste for garden, as well as there is certain company that are collecting those. So how did you do it in your country?
Okay. Joseph, do you want to ask now, or can you hear us, Joseph Ombugu? I see you want to ask a question. On the same thing, Charity, we were asking if you practice sorting waste at source at the Know Your Neighbor initiative, or is something you're considering, and if you have any information about it. Perhaps you can answer those as we wait for others. Charity, are you together?
Yes, we are together.
Okay.
My mic was muted. So for the Know Your Neighbor project, the waste itself was sorted at source. So we increased this incentive, which Danny had talked about. Maybe let me just say that in Zambia or in Lusaka itself, the practice is that the waste is collected by what we call companies like community-based enterprises. Those collect in informal settlements where we don't have roads or access for big trucks to actually go and collect. So we have community-based enterprises who use kind of tractors and whatever means of transport, that canters, which they can use to go and collect nearby places within that same informal settlements. Then for areas like that are built up and planned and shops and other industries, we use what we call the franchise. That is what we were using as the council before. We have changed now to a utility company. Just like you pay for water, you also pay for waste. So we have those ones collecting, but still the CBEs are still collecting. So for the Know Your Neighbor project, we brought them on board, including the waste pickers, those that actually pick in the dump sites. So we included them as our stakeholders as well, because they go through houses to collect waste and they make a little bit of money out of that. So we had to recognize them and see how we can bring them on board and connect them to the Zambian breweries, which was buying the sorted waste, and also connected to those who were collecting food waste for gas purposes. So we had just done those linkages into the communities or provided for those linkages. So yes, they collect money from these households, but it's as they have agreed in that community. So if you say we are going to be collecting 20 kwacha per month, it should be 20 kwacha per month, because as we use kwacha here. If they are saying we are going to be adding, it's 100 kwacha in this other, like from my house, we pay 150 kwacha for waste. So you have a truck come over and get that money. It's not money for the council, but it's for the CBE, because they have recognized that waste is also a business. So we regulate those ones who are collecting. That's now the job of the council. I hope I've answered both questions, John.
Yes. Thank you so much. Wabogo, you can unmute now. Press the unmute button and you can ask the question. If I can't be able to do it from here, just press the unmute button and then you can be able to ask. Any other question or clarification, or share your learnings from your plastic experiences in your urban areas? Maybe as maybe to Dr. Lishad.
Yeah.
I know some
Yeah,
of this
thanks.
is we connect research with policy and frameworks. How do you see this just connecting with the policy frameworks? How do we use these findings so that we can influence national or county policies on plastic waste management in Kenya and beyond?
Thanks. Before I take on that question, I also.
Sorry.
What about now? Do you hear me?
Yes, now I hear you.
Okay. I just wanted to weigh in just to maybe make some clarification on how waste handling happens within most municipalities. It's a general practice that we see in most African countries, including Ghana, including Uganda. Okay. For example, in Kenya, waste collection, including plastic, and safe handling of it and dumping it at the right place, dealing with that process, that is the responsibility constitutionally and legally for the county governments or municipalities in other areas. That's their responsibility. That's their mandate. They have to deal with that. But in order to deal with that, they need to be resourced, because waste handling will require resources. It will require equipment and money and so on, and manpower and what have you. Okay. But many countries have found that they are unable to finance, to equip it, to resource it. So what they do, they say, okay, now we are privatizing it. They say, okay, so private companies who want to help county governments or municipalities handle waste, you can now register, you can be licensed, and you can handle waste. So these private companies, it's like Adam Smith tell us, the butcher will not put up a butchery because he's sympathizing with people. Oh, these people have been eating vegetables and cabbages for a very long time. Let me open a butchery here so that they can eat meat. No, they want to get profit. So, because they also need money to operate their businesses. So these private companies will have to charge a fee. They charge a fee on households, on people on institutions who release this waste to the environment, so that they take it. Then they are registered, they pay their licenses and their fees to the county government. So that's how the privatization works. But these companies, in many cases, they cannot go to the slums, to the let me use the politically correct term, the informal settlements. They cannot go because their equipments cannot go through. So how do they get this waste? They now rely on waste pickers who can go through using hand carts. Some carry waste on their head, some carry waste, push waste through using wheelbarrows, and so on and so forth. So that's the connection and the picture of waste handling in many countries. So what we insist on here through our project is that these important players, the waste pickers, can they also get some, way in which they can work formally, they can be licensed and do their work, because they are playing a very important role in cleaning our cities, in cleaning our local governments. Now,
Hello, Richard. Oops.
Because it's insisting on that. For example, the research that we did, and people we were able to invite people from Tanzania, from Kenya, from other areas. Now, our colleague from Tanzania, for example, said, oh, Democracy Lab is a very good thing. Can we have it in Dar es Salaam? Can I try it in Dar es Salaam? And we were in the process of discussing with Charles about it, how we can probably assist in doing it, piloting it in Dar es Salaam, so that we can see how it works in Dar es Salaam. But I think we know the recent developments. We did not do it because we had planned either for October or November. We did not do it. So research gives the knowledge, research gives the data, but research also gives insights, new ways of thinking and doing things, like the methodology. But research needs to communicate this knowledge, this data, in a manner that can be consumed by policymakers. So the development, the writing up of policy briefs becomes very, very important. I think as researchers, sometimes where we fail is that we only communicate with our research audience in many cases, like the scientific audience. Once we have published our reports, our papers in peer-reviewed journals, then that's it. But in that manner, it cannot be accessed by the policymakers, and so that the policymakers can use it. We need to be able to communicate our research findings, methodologies in a simple manner that can be can be consumed by the policymaker. So research communication for policy is a very key thing. And I think, in my view, this is also something that research fund needs to support. Not only supporting the communication in journals and policies and in books, book chapters, but also there needs to be a budget of how to convert research findings into a way that it can be consumed by policy processes, and in a way that it can be consumed by those who are in practice. People who are in practice don't need the complex science. They need simple tools that can work for them, that it can be demonstrated. And those who are in the industry, they need prototypes that they can, roll out into practice, into the market. That's how I would respond to your question, John. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Richard. You have actually connected so well that about how we research. Sometimes we just select the researchers or the academicians, and sometimes we leave the policy makers in the mix. And I hope in ICLD you have learned about policy briefs, that we work with a lot of decision makers in local governments and county governments, so that they are able to understand much more. And I hope this one will also get there. And I'm sure the people who are actually who are left here, they're from local governments and county governments. Others are researchers. They can be able to learn from this as well, that we connect from this. Perhaps maybe Charity is there. Charity is whether you have integrated this KYN, Know Your Neighbour, into the Lusaka, integrating the Lusaka programs and activities that is now beyond Charity and Danny. Perhaps you can say how you did it.
Yes, we have integrated the Know Your Neighbor, the concept itself, because everybody, like all the councillors or all the leaders within our locality wanted to use it because it was a good tool. First of all, it connects them to their electorates on the ground. And then also they have some form of control in terms of discussions. They can discuss openly on the table with the locals. That's giving them an opportunity to actually make their voice known. The community is being able to present. So they wanted to use this to say it's a good driving way. At some point, we actually thought we can lose it because, if politics actually gets in, then it becomes and distorts everything. But it worked so well for us because it worked for the positive in that it focused on governance itself, and also it focused on waste management, which was the basics that we wanted it, giving it or providing a platform that is just people can be able to actually discuss their issues with their politicians. So yes, we got a resolution from the council that it should be scaled to other parts of the town. Yes, we actually got a resolution to have the priorities that we had set be put in the budget, first of all, of the council. And then with the decentralization that is happening, it means that even other small projects like I have shared in the chat box, we could actually coin it from the same concept of Know Your Neighbor, but focus on what the grant is looking for. So that is what we did. It's still emanating from the same and in the same locality, trying to actually address the same problem that we had identified in the beginning. So the discussion is, yes, are we talking with the communities on the grassroots? Yes, we are talking. Are we dealing with the issue of waste management and recycling as we had indicated? Yes, we are doing that. Are we also engaging other stakeholders? Yes, we are doing that. So that's how our initiative has been successful. And it's beyond us. I'm not there, but the initiative is able to move on. And when we are back in the community, they still use the same slogans, like when you see something, say something. That's how we have been able to move with the Know Your Neighbor concept. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Any other comment? We are actually on our last 5 minutes, and we want to leave on time. Any quick comments from any person before we ask our presenters to make their closing remarks?
Yes.
Yes,
Hello,
Joseph.
Yes. Hi everyone.
Hello, Joseph.
Yes, I take this opportunity. Are you getting me clearly?
Yes, very clearly.
Yes. As we are thinking of waste management, I got some concern because when we talk about recycling these waste, we talk much about the modern towns, but we fail to recognize the rural areas. I got to the concern because I came across some of the waste along the rural areas, but these people, the locals, are not well informed how to handle these materials. For instance, when you go to these bee plantation, you get these workers. They are using the chemicals or the containers that maybe they were used on agricultural sprays or pesticides as they are containers to carry their own food. Sometimes you find that they are taking them as a thermal flask, of which sometimes is so dangerous to their health. And for me, I thought that we could also be taking care of the rural areas and also inform our mothers, our sisters back in the village how to use these containers, because at the end, when they put their food on these, they never wash them with the correct chemicals for them to be recycled, for them to be used as food containers. That was much concern on my side, because also when I approached one of the rural school, I got few out of 10 pupils. You could find half of them they are carrying with some of them. You could think they are going to spray some kettles, but whatever is inside is what they are consuming. And for me, it got concerned to my part, and I felt like if we get people, or we join harder, then we train them, because these plastic bottles that they were used initially to pack for the packaging of the pesticides and also agricultural products, I felt like it's also a concern to them because of their health. Then of these people who take these licensed companies that they are taking waste, they are taking the waste from town back to the rural areas, of which you find that they are dumping inside. Sometimes they are also hazardous to the people surrounding. So as a government, do they only license, or they also follow and they make sure that where the waste is being recycled, or where there is being dumped, whether it's the right way, or they are also risking the life of the villagers, because some of them you find that they are also close to rivers, where at the end the villagers or the people in the rural, they are still consuming the water. And sometimes, because we are also doing research on my field on cases of the CA esophagus, because also we are thinking how we are managing our waste could also be leading the high risk of cancer or the carcinomas in our region. So I'm so happy because of this idea that Mr. John, that you are coming up with, how we are going to train people on waste management, because also health-wise, I trust, I believe that also we are going to do this, because right now we are doing a case study research on cases on central Kenya, the rise of CA esophagus. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you so much, Joseph. Joseph actually is in the medical field, so he has raised a very interesting concern about medical waste and also this sensitive waste like those pesticides. And as we come to close, I would like Dr. Richard and also Charity to make your remarks and also your closing remarks, so that we can actually also allow Clara to make her final comments and we close on time. Dr. Richard? Yeah, he's here.
Yeah, thank you very much, John. I think it was a very useful moment to share ideas and to share knowledge, and also to know each other, interact. This is my first time to participate in the alumni ICLD alumni talks. I look forward for many more. I think I will not now give further comments on the content. Thank you.
Thank you. Charity?
Thank you, John. Thank you, ICLD, for giving me this opportunity to share. Thank you, Danny, for actually pointing out that we should share with our friends, colleagues that joined. We are available to actually discuss further on how we were able to succeed with our project. What I can say is that when you know your neighbor, you cannot do something that is bad. Or when you know your neighbor, you'll be able to open up and actually speak. It's a good concept which we can actually use for social cohesion and also promoting a just community to improve the services around us. Thank you so much to everyone.
Thank you so much to both presenters, Dr. Richard and Charity. You have been very valuable. You have shared quite interesting information. In fact, now you have triggered a lot more. I think I'll look for you, Dr. Richard, because I would want to learn more about a couple of things that are happening in Kenya, especially where we assume that waste pickers are largely the shokolas or the street boys. And sometimes that is not the conception that we need to hear. Thank you so much. That was very valuable. And also, Charity, I am interested in adopting or replicating KYN, Know Your Neighbour in Kenya, and I think we will work on 2026. And with that, I want to take it back to Clara, just to have final comments and close the meeting. Over to you, Madam Clara.
Thank you very much. For us, this has also been a great illustration of how democratic development can coexist with improving on fulfilling the technical mandates that a local government has. And these two really go in tandem. And that is what we at ICLD work with all the time through all the local governments and alumni that are involved in our programs. So both these presentations have really highlighted how that can happen in tandem. I also want to direct a little thank you to Richard for bringing up the connecting research and practice, how those two are connected. It is very much what we try to do from ICLD Knowledge Center, which is one of 3 legs at ICLD, and to have these discussions where we gather local government officials and researchers and have policy discussion about how research can actually support the work undertaken in the local governments is one of our central missions. So thank you everyone for engaging in these presentations and in this discussion today. And I am sure that each and every one of you will have things to discuss with your peers and your colleagues back home, and that will be rings on the water. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you too.
Linking up again, and Merry Christmas.